two civilian profile vehicles rolled in, and out jumped 8 kind of cool looking operators with beards, long hair. They were dressed differently, had different kit and equipment, different weapon systems and all this kind of stuff. And they walked in, they probably had a meeting on the camp that I was working in, and then they left maybe 2 hours later. And that for me, it was just a moment of penny drop and thinking, who the fuck are those guys? What are they doing? And how do I become one of those guys?
Well, let's talk about some of the missions over there. I mean, obviously you've seen some incredible amounts of combat, and I'm sure there's plenty of things you can't talk about. But I mean, what can you share with us that really stands out as a particularly tough mission, or something that sticks out as a particular learning point in your life?
Yeah, so there's one in particular in the Marines, and it was that that first kind of contact that was just chaos. But that was more of a personal learning development thing that that I learned a lot about myself. That I could react, and that I was there, and I was able to do the basics, but also learn and develop into a better person. So that was the kind of the Marines. But also, I remember being on the front gate in Kabul, Afghanistan, and the first time that I saw UK Special Forces was on that tour. I was in charge, me and a few of the guys in the Marines were on duty on the main gate. One of the roles and responsibilities when you weren't out on patrols was to obviously offer the camp security. So you would be, at different stations. But on the main gate, we would look at the flow and ingress and egress of vehicles in and out of camp. We would be checking passes, all that kind of usual stuff. And 2 civilian profile vehicles rolled in, and out jumped 8 kind of cool looking operators with beards, long hair. They were dressed differently, had different kit and equipment, different weapon systems and all this kind of stuff. And they were British as well, which for me, the first time of seeing it, I'd heard about Special Forces, but they were kind of a bit of a mystery. And they're really, really nice, approachable people. They walked in, they probably had a meeting on the camp that I was working in, and then they left maybe 2 hours later. And that for me, it was just a moment of penny drop and thinking, who the fuck are those guys? What are they doing? And how do I become one of those guys? So that for me planted a seed on that first tour. I then went back to the Marines. I had another deployment up to Scotland, and then for me, I started thinking more and more about Special Forces selection. I'm thinking, what do I need to do to get myself in that world? So probably arguably one of the hardest soldiering courses that you can do in the Marines and in the military in general is the sniper course. And I thought for me personally, if I could pass the sniper course, that would set me up for success for joining Special Forces. So I put myself into the sniper course. I passed the sniper course with the Royal Marines back down at Lympstone. And then for me, it was another tick, another kind of verification to say, yeah, okay, now I can go on to Special Forces selection. And it's a volunteered course. UK Special Forces, you volunteer yourself to go on to the selection process. And off I went onto selection. And selection is, fucking hell, it's probably the best job interview in the world, isn't it? We're looking at everything, and it's designed in such a way to layer on complex tasks, while you're tired, wet, hungry, all the usual things in the military, but just, times 10 on another level. And then you've got all the weight carrying, all the navigation stuff, and they say it is basic soldiering done to a very high standard, which is true. But there are more. There's definitely a very, very steep learning curve that is attached to Special Forces, and they're always layering it on constantly while you're being reviewed and watched and looked at under the watchful eyes of the DS. So selection, that was 8 to 9 months, and again, I passed. I was quite fortunate. You need a bit of lady luck on your side in terms of injury. I was fine. There's not anybody that doesn't go through selection without any sort of form of injury. But for me, there was nothing major. I had a sort of twisted ankle and a few bits and pieces, but nothing that wouldn't stop me progressing through selection. And for me, once I'd set myself that goal and that idea, it then became like a burning desire for me. It became a real passion. And it sort of consumed my everything, my being. That's all I could think about, all I would talk about. And I really for me, it was everything, because I saw it as almost like there was no plan B. It was just plan A. It was special forces, or I don't want to go back to the Marines. And if I've got to go back to the Marines, I'll leave, and then I'll probably do something else. So, I really sort of I put a lot of self-induced pressure on that in terms of passing the course, and thankfully I did. I then joined, one of the Sabre squadrons, and it's again snakes and ladders life. You sort of pass selection. You're a Marine, a sniper. I've got a great pass in terms of the selection. I've done well. Out of the 240 people that started that selection process, I think there were 6 of us that passed for the SBS. So that gives you kind of an indication as to the percentage and the failure rate attached to selection, and everybody on selection as well. That they're good soldiers, they're Marines, they're paras. I think Marines make up 50 to 60% of UK Special Forces. So, there's a good caliber of person on that selection process, and then following that into the squadron and hit the biggest snake again, you're back to the bottom of the pile, and again the learning starts again, and it's different. Everything is different. The weapon systems, the communication, everything is completely different. And when I joined in 2008, it was probably it was the golden years. It was the highlight of Special Forces operations, particularly in Afghanistan at the time. It was very kinetic. It was high value target hunting, man-hunting operations, but very tip of the spear, strategic level operations. And we were going out every night. Every night it was so busy, and the jobs were just, again, back to your original question, any that stand out. My first job in the SBS was a kind of Call of Duty style job that was just unbelievable to me. And I use the word fortunate, hopefully in the right context, because war again and everything else, and the battle space, it's I'm not trying to glamorize it by any stretch of the imagination, but it was everything that I wanted and hoped and dreamed of joining in terms of Special Forces and what the missions were. And they're very different to conventional Green Army missions. And then I had 4 operational tours throughout my kind of 10 years within Special Forces there. Each one of those were very different. I finished my last, so the first one was really kinetic. The second one I was out in the desert doing a mobility stuff, so more vehicle operations and interdictions in terms of cutting off the arterial routes for the drug smuggling, which was funding the terrorism and the weapons and everything else. And then I had another kinetic tour, and then I did my last tour in Kabul, and I was kind of in charge or leading a partner-led force, and by that stage in 2013, it was now we're kind of handing over the baton to the in-country partners, the Afghans and their special forces and their special police. And at the end of that tour, I was recognised or awarded the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross for bravery for combat actions, specifically for that tour. So I'm condensing 10 years here and all the other things that we did, and the training and everything else, and into hopefully quite a succinct time period. But yeah, it was busy.